Hi, in this video we'll be looking at how to create navigation menus to better organize content created by Publisher. It's quite common to create multiple reports in Publisher over time and hand out links to those reports to users. But at some point it's better to create a navigation menu to centralize all those reports. You can add more reports to the menus over time, and you can also secure based on the user's account or their group so that you can hide menus and reports. You've got the additional benefit of also adding branding to the navigation menu. Later on in this video we'll be looking at more advanced concepts like having a global filter, for example a company or a period at the top of the menu, and have that cascade down through the menus. And also at looking at how we can keep statistics on what users are accessing the menu or the reports. Let's have a look at some examples. So I've just gone to the Sharperlight website and I've selected Demo Server, and you can see menus here based on various report packs. And in addition to creating menus, the same concepts apply for creating slices and tabs as well. For this training video I've prepared some very simple examples of menus, and the first one will be month-end tasks. So this was generated by Form Designer in one of its templates, and you can see there's our drop-down menu, and we can have control over whether the report appears under the menu or in the new tab. I'll explain those options shortly. In addition to that, we can also use Publisher to create menus, and those menus can be based on the tables in a particular product or from selecting from a list of published reports that you've already prepared. So we'll be looking at that as well. And on the Sharperlight website there are examples of various dashboards that have been organized into menus under Demo Server. So you can see here, not only do we have menus, but we also have things like slices. Here the content's been organized into a tree. So that's a more advanced concept that we can cover later on. And towards the end we'll be looking at how to create cascading filters. So here we have the company, and so when we select the company and set that filter is then applied as a default filter so that we don't have to keep on selecting the company or the period, whatever the case may be, when we run these reports. For this training exercise we'll be using month-end tasks as our example. So let's create the month-end tasks in your system. So go to Form Designer and just sign in, and you can see here I've already created the month-end tasks, but in your case it'll be blank. So you can click on New, and from the templates list select month-end tasks. Once you do that, well, I've already got month-end tasks here, but what will happen is that it will import these tables or Form Designer tables and then launch you into the browser, and on the publisher side you should see then these entries here where you've got month-end and here's the main menu, and that's where we can start editing the menu and adding new menu items. Before we proceed too far, I'll show you the other way menus can be created. If we right click on the published list, there's a section called Create Menu Report, and if we choose Publish Queries, then we can organize pre-existing queries into a menu. If we select Product Tables, well, then we can select tables from a data model. Here's month-end, and you can see that we've got a number of reports, and one of them, the media type, is menu horizontal. So this is the main landing page, which is the link up here, which is month end main. Let's edit this report. And navigation menus are essentially query data sets. So we edit the query, and when we do that, we'll get a prompt asking us if we want to edit the query in the menu editor. So we'll say yes to that, and we'll see this UI here. The UI basically reflects the menu structure. So if you have a look at reports, so there's reports, and under there we've got KPI stats, etc. So here we've got the description that we want on the menu. Here we have the link to the report, and then we've got these other options. Notice that there are some items here in blue. So if we come to configuration, this part of the menu we want to limit to administrators only. For that reason, we've used this checkbox here. Only administrators can access. By enabling that just on the menu at the top level, other users who are not administrators will simply not see the configuration menu. In addition to that, you could specify the users and groups who have access to that menu item. So submissions, we may want to lock it down to user 2, 3, and the admin group. And you can see here, I can select users from this list and limit who has access to it. So if I was to come in under a different account, I'll just show you now, we can see that this is user 2, and I don't have the configuration menu, but I do have submissions. If I was to go to user 1, this add submissions would drop out of the list. So that's an example of a security. You can also add icons to menu items. So if I was to come here and select from the list businessman, there's the icon. There's two types of icons. Some are CSS based and some are actual images. So we get the preview for the images, but let's just have a quick look at that. So I'm going to click OK and apply, and then refresh the menu, and now you can see there's that icon. Here's an example of a non-image icon. So here we've got a picture of a coffee. I'll just show you how that works. So let's go back and edit the menu. And if I come down to this menu item, you can see that it's a different type of icon, but we don't get a preview. But we can click View Icons to see the full list. So here are the names for those images that we can select from. So that's quite handy if you want to associate icons with the menu items. For the more advanced users, we can do CSS styling that's applied to that menu item. And let's go back to this KPI stats. So by default, it will open that report under the menu. So here it's set to default, but I'll just set that to open in new tab and click OK. And let's refresh the report and see what the behavior is now. So instead of appearing under here, we can now make the report open in a new tab. That's quite handy when users want to compare the results of reports and they want to flick between the tabs and they don't want the menu to display another report over what they've just been working. Okay, let's discuss how we can add new reports to an existing menu. First of all, let's choose a spot where we want to add the report. So I'll add it under the reports menu and next to task. So I'll select that, I'll select new, and here's our title. So I'll say new report is the title. Come down to the URL link section and click on the browse button here. So let's come across to publish reports and click on this button here, and now we can browse the publish reports that already exist. I'd like to choose Journal Light, and I can override the behavior, but I'll just use the default behavior, and there's our link to the report. You could copy and paste reports and paste it into here directly, and if you've got external reports that aren't Sharperlight content, you can select other or just copy and paste a URL link in there. You can also navigate to dashboard pages. So here we have our new report item. Click apply, and that should appear in the menu now. Let's add a sub-menu now to this reports menu. So we'll come back to Publisher, click Edit, and now let's go to Reports again, and just in here we'd like a sub-menu. So I'm going to click on New, and I'll call this Other. Okay, so notice that Other, the content type is set to Group. Now we just need to create a sub report under this menu item. So this is where we use this sub menu button. So I'm going to click on that, and notice how it's placed an entry under there. So you just need to do that for the first one, and of course then you can set the link to the report. Once you've got at least one menu item under this other sub menu, you can then drag and drop menus into that other group. So I'll just drag that on top of menu there. There we go. And I'll drag and drop task. And if I wanted to take task out of there, I can drag and drop it externally. But we just need that one menu item in there before the drag and drop works. Let's have a look at the menu items now. And there's our submenu with the reports appearing. Okay, let's talk about default content. When you create a menu, under the menu you can decide what report or dashboard or image you want to display by default. So let's have a look at that concept. So I'll come into the menu and use the menu editor again, and let's have a look at the default content section. You can see here it's displaying the task and submissions report by default. If I was to blank that out and apply, then we're showing nothing at all. If I wanted to put a different report in as default content, I could find the report, for example KPI stats, come over to links and copy that link, and then we come back to the menu and we'll paste that link in as the default content. Now you don't need this full address, you just need the relative address. So I'm going to strip that off and just start off with /reports for the KPI stats as the default content. So we'll just apply that, and now we have a different report appearing by default. Okay, let's have a look at the branding now. Click on header, and you can see there's the raw HTML for this header section. This was automatically generated for us, and if you're creating the menu from scratch, it will ask you what branding image you want to include, but you can see here there's a section called company logo, and there's the link to your company logo. And of course generally that's the only area you need to change. That link there, and also the height and the width if required. So next I'll talk about themes. So the theme is what sort of color do you theme that you want to apply to your menu and all the sub-reports. The theme can be applied at the menu level and then it will cascade down to all the sub-reports. So there's no need to set colors and themes at the report level. Just set it at the main menu level. So here we've got basic 2, which is what I recommend, so that you reserve colors for meanings in report, like traffic lights. So we try to avoid colors, garish colors in your themes. But if I wanted to set it to default and red, you can see there that it's got a red theme, and I can then use the options to then change the colors to suit. So like this. So let's just have a look at this theme now. So if I apply that, it should have a blue theme, and that's automatically cascaded down to all the sub-reports. So I recommend you leave it on default too for themes. Let's go into a little bit more depth about security. So in the month-end example, we had particular report items that were secure. So here we have user 2, 3 and admin who can only access that menu item. And in this way we've got a very simple security or obfuscation method. So they won't see the menu item. But the underlying report itself can still be accessed if they get a direct link. So for that reason, if you do have very strict security requirements, what you can do is come into the individual report itself. So for example, people, and if I look at the security tab here, I can then say what users have access to the people report. So I'll set that up as user 3. So user 3 is the only person who can see that report. And in the main menu, I haven't said anything about the people report. So I haven't applied security in here to people. So what happens in that scenario is that because I've applied security on this report directly, if my current account doesn't have access to that report, this people item will drop from the list. So let's just have a look at that concept now. So I'll just go to another account using a different browser. So this is currently user 2, and you can see that people has disappeared from that list under user 2. If I should see that menu item appear, and even if I got a direct link to the report, I wouldn't be able to view that report or run that report unless I was that particular account or group that I've added. Okay, let's now discuss how we can create menus inside Publisher. So what I recommend you do is right-click and select Create Menu Report from the menu. And from here we have a number of options. So we can create a menu based on existing published reports or on product tables. So let's have a look at the first option, which is from creating a menu based on existing reports. So here you can see I've got a number of reports. So let's choose just a few for this example, and I'll click on OK. And now here are the reports that I've selected, and there's the titles for those reports, and here are the main menu that I'd like to apply to them. So I would say this is reports, and this one here would be reports, and this one might be other. Of course you can edit these at a later date. So I'll click on OK. Now this is the group that the reports will be bundled under. I'll just leave that as is, and we'll give it a title, new report pack, and here we've got the default content. So the default content will be what's displayed. So I could copy and paste a URL there. Again, this can be edited at a later date. And here's our image URL. So I'll just show you how you can copy and paste that image URL in here. And that will be the one that appears at the top here. So we can browse for these logos, your company logo, and I think I'll use this one here, and from the list I can use copy image address. So I'll just select that and I'll preview it in the browser first, and that looks good. So I'll come back to the report pack that we're creating and I'll copy the URL address into there. Now there's different types of URL addresses. This one's a inline image, so it says data image. They're quite good because it doesn't have any cross browser restrictions on it. So let's click OK now, and there's our new menu based on those items that we selected. Now we haven't set the default content, but that's okay, and let's just click OK. So there's our group, and it's created the menu under main. So let's view that in the web, and here it is here. So there's those menu items, and if as we discussed before, we can edit that to open the menu tabs and also edit the header section further. So that's one way of creating a report pack or a navigation menu. Let's have a look at create menu report again. This time we'll select product tables. So here we go, and when we do that we select the product that we'd like to create the reports on. So that's sample accounting and I'll do it on that company, and here are the tables that exist. So I'll select quite a few in this case, receivables and finance. Select OK. So there are the reports that are based on those selections, and we'll click OK again. I won't set the branding this time, and there's the menu items, and let's view that in the web. So this time we've got a new group and main. Notice that when I select these reports, I'm always prompted for the company ID, and then I need to select it. So that might become tiresome, that each time you open a report you may have to choose a particular company ID that you would like to use. Also, on occasions you may have to set the current period each time you come into a report. But what we'd like to do is, up here in the menu section, is set a filter, a global cascading filter, that will allow the user to select their desired default company ID. And so if they change it up here, that will be the default that appears in the selection. So let's have a look at that concept. So we'll come back to our report pack that we've just created here. So there's the main menu, and this time when we edit the query we would like to say no. So we're not going to use the menu editor, and this is the raw data set that drives the menu, and you can see it's just like any other report. It's a series of rows of data, and this data is in CSV format. So there's our main menu, our sub menu, and then our link. So let's go back to the query and edit the defined data set, and you can see that's CSV format. You can edit this if you like without using the menu editor. So if I wanted to add a new report, I could copy that row, add its sort position, and then change the label and the link like that. That's how you could manually edit the menus. So in our case, what we want to do is just leave that alone, but to add a new filter in here for the company ID on the sample accounting database. If it's SAP Business One or one of these other systems, just select the appropriate table in that system. So I'm going to select Other and then Text from the menu. It's just gone off the screen at the moment, but it is there. So I'm just selecting Other Text, and I will call this Company ID. If it's SAP Business One, I'll just call it Company. Okay, so now we have a placeholder for asking for the company, but we have no definition for the lookup. So if I double click on here or select Options, I can define the lookup for company ID. So I'm going to come across here to create subquery, and then we change our product to sample accounting or SAP Business One, whatever your target system is. And under sample accounting, I'm now going to look for the companies table, and then I'll output the company ID and its name. So let's just preview that. So there's the valid list of companies for sample accounting. So that's going to be the driver for my filter lookup. So I've created my subquery. Let's set subqueries used for lookup values selection. That's very important that you select that. And we want to change it to be a drop-down list. So I'll just change that to drop-down pick list. And we only want to select one company, so I'm not going to select multi-select, and refresh that page. Now notice that the new filter hasn't appeared at the top yet. It's there, but we just can't see it. There's an additional setting that we need to do. So let's edit the query again, and this time go back to the menu editor. And this is where the filters in header section comes into play. So I'll select that, and now those additional filters that are visible will appear in the header section. So I'll commit that, and now you can see there's our company drop-down list. But you can see I've got a from and a to there, and really we just want a single company, so we'll need to change that. So we'll come back, we'll edit the menu again, we'll say no to the menu editor, and now we go to our filter and we'll say that's prompt single values only. So commit that, and now it should be just a single company that we drop down. Now there is further complications. So if I select a company here and click set and then come into here, notice that the company ID hasn't cascaded down to this report. And that's because the filters have names, and when you cascade down a filter value, anything that has the same name gets the same value. But so at the moment it appears that they don't have the same filter name, so this is not cascading down to this report. Let's have a look at the report, which is journal line. Here it is here, journal line, and if we edit the query for that, there's the filter for the company ID, and the filter is called company ID. So I'll just have a look at that. So there's the name. Now the filter that we just created for the menu has a different name, so that's why it's not cascading down. So let's go back to our menu. I'll just sort on modified so I can quickly find it. So there it is there. Edit and no to that. And you can see, yes, the filter name doesn't match. So let's change that so it does match. And we need to provide a default as well, so we'll say MIT is our default. Otherwise we'll push a blank down onto these reports. So I'll commit that now and refresh that. So here's our report. I'll change it to MITS, set that, and if I come into here now, that's MITS. So same filter name, it's cascaded down. If I go to another report, now it's obviously received the same filter value. So on occasions you deliberately don't want this global filter to cascade down to the report, so just give it the report a different filter name, and that way it won't receive the filter value. Let's continue now by adding more functionality to this report here, where we have a filter that's global and cascades down to all the sub-reports. So we'd select the company, for example MITS, and once we set that, that would be the default for any report that we ran after that point. So what often happens is that users say that depending on their account, or different users, they want to default to different companies. Now it's possible to do this in site setup to set up a default company, but what we'll do is put logic behind this global cascading filter so that when a user selects a company, that it stores it in system properties so that that default's remembered against their user account. So let's have a look to see how that would be done. So we'll come back to Publisher and we'll edit the query, and this time instead of using the editor we'll say no. And you can see here I've already prepared this logic for us. So if we have a look at this expression down here, so I've added a new expression, and I'll just edit the existing one that we've done. You can see that I've used system properties set, and because there's many menu items, we just want to do this once, so hence the start of report. I'll show you this in larger text in a moment, but system properties is a way of creating global settings that can be used for miscellaneous things. For example, what you determine to be the current period, in this case what the last company ID was that the user selected. So the first parameter is just a condition. I don't even want to set this at the start of the report. Then we have the code that we'd like to store the value against. So I've said it's company ID minus and then the user name. I find all these by doing a search, so I could do property set, and that would give me the various templates, and if I did username I could find that function as well. So, and then the last parameter is, or what value do we want to store in the system. So here I've selected the filter value company ID, so I got that from here, which is this one here. So when the report's executed, well, the menu's selected, it's always going to store the last company that they selected. So that's in expressions. And then for the company ID where the filter is, which is here, we want it to retrieve the system property from the system and use that as a default value, and that's what I've done here. So it starts with expression, and then just to designate that we're doing an expression here, and then I'm doing a system properties get, and there's my company ID plus the user's name, and if it doesn't find it I have to provide it with some sort of default, so I've chosen MIT in that case. If you just require a closer look at that. That's the syntax that's used. So that's for saving the value. I only do it once, and we use the username and then the filter for the company. And when we have the filter, we just retrieve the value and default to MIT if nothing is found. So the end result is that now it's going to remember those settings for us. One other point is that if we just come back into this data set here, make sure that this is hidden, so the save one, otherwise it'll start appearing in the menu as false. So let's review that. So I'm just going to refresh that now. Instead of this defaulting to MIT, it's now recorded my last setting. So I'll just set that to MTT, set that, and now if I refresh it, it'll remember it. And if I go to a different account that hasn't ever recorded their preference, it'll go back to MIT. Let's have a look at system properties to see where that's stored. There's various ways we can get to system properties from the main menu, or I can even get to it from here. So if I come down to system properties, you can see it's already made a few entries. Let's talk about the styles of the menus up here. So if we go to the Options tab, you can see that currently the menu style is set to menu horizontal, which is the default, but there are other options in here. So let's have a look at menu panel. So I'll just change it to menu panel and refresh the report, and now you can see it's a panel on the side. If I wanted to try a tree, I can also do that, but a tree implies that the data is actually in a hierarchical form, which is quite useful when you're creating slices. If you get the, for example, chart of accounts might be organized into different sections. If you just get those into columns and then display it as a tree, you can then have a report appear on the side based on a URL link with that criteria. So that's the concept of a tree. We won't go into that in this menu because that's a whole subject in itself. With regards to keeping statistics on reports, you'll see that each published report under Options has a statistics checkbox. If this is enabled, then all the users that have accessed this report or the main menu are kept in a log, and then that log can be queried in its own right, or you can go to the main index page. So I'll just go to the main index page here, and we can see a pre-canned report. So there's the index page, and under report statistics we can then see what users are accessing those reports and from what locations as well. So this is quite a handy concept to embrace when you're wondering if the reports are actually being utilized or not. If you were to create a report on system and go to the tables, and let's do a search for statistics, there's the table in case you want to produce your own report on who's accessing those menus. Let's bring this video to a close. So as you can see, the creation of navigation menus is quite important to organize your reports into a single location. So what happens once you've created the menu, you can then take this link up the top here. You don't need the USID part of the link, just up to main. You can copy that and email it out, and then over time add more to the menu and create as much content as you require. You do have the ability to secure the menus so that users can see only parts of the menu, and administrators or people in different departments can see more menus, and even securing the reports themselves for a more stricter access control, which the menus then reflect as well.